Finally, I just had this one big idea. We'll just get the same cast and we'll film a little bit each year. Like, could you do that? Would that work as a movie?
If only someone had told Richard Linklater ahead of time, they could have saved him 10 years of work. Because this week we're discussing de-aging in cinema.
Because recently I saw Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. You know, it's Indiana Jones. You know it's going to have a cool opening sequence. We see Harrison Ford, who's 80 now by the way, fighting the Nazis. De-aged, it's about half his age at 40 years old, and it got me thinking, Declan, is de-aging going to be the future of cinema, or is it just a cheap gimmick?
It's not fair to call it a gimmick. I guess you could call it a trend. I actually think it's becoming better the more it feels like a gimmick, because it's not like 3D where it's integral to the whole film and it changes the whole experience. You know, every 3D movie has to have that stupid moment back in the day where something gets thrown at the screen, so everyone in the cinema is like, ugh. Earliest example of de-aging apparently was from the X-Men, The Last Stand. You had Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart looking about 20-30 years younger. It's not great, like it's definitely a bit ropey looking at times, but for the first time it's pretty damn impressive. It can only be so impressive because you're looking at basically two really old guys looking as only old guys, so it's not as noticeable or impressive, but for a first go it's pretty damn impressive. It was limited technology. You're not going to use it for a whole film because it would really start to look a bit silly. It wasn't until like The Irishman years later where it's integral to every single shot and every single scene. Taking The Irishman as an example, the fact that the technology is so good now and so available and so accessible, and you can actually use it over the course of a whole film in pretty much every shot, you could see a gangster's life from 30 to 80, and it's pretty much seamless because, you know, it's not like you see him over the course of his life, but really there's three looks. There's the normal actor without makeup, the actor with a little bit of makeup to look 60, and then the actor with loads of makeup to look 81. You can see them really age, just every scene is a couple of years on and they're just looking older and older and older, and it becomes almost seamless. That is when it kind of becomes a gimmick. You know, it's nearly the gimmick of the film. Yeah. Roger Zemeckis, he's always been on the forefront of this technology in films. He's making a new film here, which is coming out with Tom Hanks and that bitch from Forrest Gump, whose name I can't remember at this second. It's a really interesting concept, not just for the fact that de-aging is so integral to the plot. Every part of the movie takes place in one room of a house and the camera never moves. It's a single frame and it spans over like 50, 60 years through the course of their entire life. A gimmick movie. It's a gimmick concept at heart. Without de-aging technology, you wouldn't be able to do it. That's what makes it more interesting. It's the fact that now you can do it so well. You can really play around with it, and visionary directors and writers and filmmakers can really play around with crazy ideas, and we can actually see a character really go through every stage of their life. Like, it's fascinating. It's amazing. There's going to be so many ways it's used really interestingly. So I don't mind that. And going back to Indiana Jones, it's great to see the young version. It felt like a scene out of an old Indiana Jones film. You know, there is still an uncanny valley thing that happens with their face where they look a bit blurry and a bit weird. But for the most part, it didn't take me out of it. It did kind of hammer home how old Harrison Ford now is once it went to his actual age now for the majority of the film.
What Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny had behind it was a big budget, of course. And it actually took over 100 visual effects artists over 3 years using archival footage of like Harrison Ford and Indiana Jones films to create this effect. So you need a certain scope of production to be able to pull it off. Can directors with lower budgets, with not enough resources at their disposal, pull it off to that level? I don't know, you know.
Well, with the way AI is going, probably they will. Like, it's going to get really weird. And we've done an AI episode in the past, so we won't go too much into the AI side of it. But that kind of hammers home what I wanted to say next, because it shows how spoiled we are with special effects nowadays, where Harrison Ford magically looking 40 or so years younger can only be so impressive. But except for the best examples, whenever I see de-aging in films, I'm underwhelmed, only because I can draw the comparison to these examples of just random dudes on YouTube who have fucked around with deepfake software and done examples themselves. There's one I can think of with Harrison Ford from that movie Solo, where, you know, they obviously got a younger actor to represent him, the old school way of doing it. But someone's gone in and deepfaked a young Harrison Ford's face over the actor, and it looks great. Arguably, I'd say even better at times. see on YouTube as well as of examples of, say, like The Irishman or other famous examples of de-aging in films where someone's done their own version of it. Maybe I don't have a great eye, maybe I'm missing little details or blemishes that are there that a visual effects guy would point out or most other people will see. But to me, I'm looking at it and I'm like, not only is that on par, it's better. I think that looks better. It looks more believable. It looks more like a younger version of that actor. It's more convincing to me. Maybe there's just these really talented people out there that can do it, and that maybe they've already been snapped up by Hollywood and they're going to be the guys that will be running this in the future. But I'm just kind of shocked of like, how is it Hollywood has to spend so much money? You could also say it for the voices, because one of the hard things to do is de-aging a voice. I saw one where this, this non-professional guy fucking about in his bedroom probably redoes the de-aging of the opening scene of Dial of Destiny and compares it to the original, and it's way better. You just hear it and you're like, that is fucking Harrison Ford cracking his whip back in the day in Star Wars or in early Indiana Jones films. It's just him. Like, it's perfect. They nailed it. And it's just mad to me because I've never seen that with CGI. I've never seen YouTubers do their own CGI of a scene of King Kong or the original Jurassic Park and it be better. It never looks better. It looks shite. There's pretty good guys nowadays, like, are really impressive, but you're still like, if I saw that in a film 10 years ago, it'd be poor CGI.
To me, that opening sequence was the best part of the whole film because we watched it in the cinema and I was just really, really excited when I saw a young indie, like doing his Nazi bashing, like classic indie. And then later on as the film goes and when he's 80, I just struggled to believe it. Like, this guy is running around full speed, punching men who are 40, 50 years younger than him, knocking him out. And I'm like, that's an old pensioner. That wouldn't happen. And, yeah, I agree with you that I don't know if I could sit through a whole film of that de-aging because it would start to play with my mind a bit because I know that it's not real and I know that it's not like the real Harrison Ford, and I would grow a bit sickly of it.
I guess it's what your eyes see, because people see different things and they like it. And like, some people just love even bad CGI over practical effects taken right out of it unless they're perfect. It doesn't happen for me. I love practical effects even when they're ropey or old. I just take it in the context and I like it. It sells it to me. But I get that people have different eyes. But for me, it's kind of like when Spielberg and Peter Jackson were so into that motion capture stuff and they were like, let's make Tintin and we're going to make 5 of them and everyone's going to love them. And I had one look at the trailer and I was just like, that looks stupid. It's too in between a cartoon and real life. I don't like it. And obviously it's not as bad as that in, like Indiana Jones, The Dial of Destiny. But I get what you mean, where there's something about it where it starts to look stupid after a point. It's kind of like, when you have a practical effect sometimes and you just show 2 seconds of it and that's enough to sell the effect. But if you point the camera at it for like 30 seconds, after the first 10, you're going to just start being like, that's a guy in a rubber suit. That looks silly. So maybe it's the fact that the technology is not just there yet, but it will get to a point where it is just seamless. And I'll tell you one, which I never saw the film because I heard what it was about and the premise, and I was just like, I don't want to see that. It sounds awful. Yeah. Terminator Dark Fate, whatever the last one was. Spoiler alert, but it happens in the first 5 minutes. It's an alternative timeline where John Connor does get killed as a little kid. They de-age it and create it so it's those 2 actors, the mother and the son, John Connor, from Terminator 2. And they look perfect. Like, of all the things I looked at before doing this episode, I had to rewatch it like 10 times. I could not believe how perfect this de-aging was done. It just looks like they went back in time and grabbed the actors and threw them into this scene. It is unbelievable. And Terminator franchise has had some ropey de-aging, like Salvation back in the day.
Yeah.
It looked bad. I think they nearly got away with it because, it's supposed to be a soulless, lifeless killing machine. The uncanny valley nearly helped it. So it probably will get to a point where it is unnoticeable. And, it's still a novelty right now. So it's more noticeable. You kind of know like, oh, they de-aged him for this scene. But it might get to a point where we don't even know de-aging's happening.
Brad Pitt in The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. I, for one, thought it was a pretty good effort for the time. What's your thoughts on the use of de-aging?
Well, again, I think it's like the context because it's built into the plot, the fact that he's supposed to be aging backwards. He doesn't become an old Brad Pitt. He becomes an old baby Brad Pitt.
Yes.
And then he becomes a young fucking whatever he becomes. And in between, he sort of eventually becomes just Brad Pitt, where he was just the actor for like one scene, I guess. And again, I think that helped it because you know, when he's that old baby thing, you know you're looking at something odd. So how accurate the effects have to be, jumbled up in your head because you're seeing something that shouldn't exist anyway. You know, overall, the special effects I thought were fucking incredible. Like the way they got around things where, for when he's kind of like, I don't know, an elderly 10-year-old, they had various dwarf actors playing the physical body and moving around with a green screen covered head and the rest of their body on show and dressed up in the costume, doing the physical things that Brad Pitt's character is going to do in the film. And then separately, they would film Brad Pitt's head and face with motion capture to capture his performance and then layer that on over a makeup version of his head onto the body. So it's this amazing melding of the de-aging tech, the motion capture, and the physical in-camera effect combining to create the final product. So it is a really fascinating way to make a film. It's one of those rare special effects laden dramas. You know, it's an emotional film. It's not a giant sci-fi Star Wars-esque Lord of the Rings fantasy spectacle where you want battle scenes and huge explosions, but huge amount of special effects, huge budget required, but it's going into this drama. So it's a rare and odd film. For the kind of emotional drama that it is, it's odd that it would have to be filmed and created in that way. You know, the actor's performance is in one room probably weeks later, and then the body of and the actual scene is in another room, and then it's melded together on a computer. It seems so convoluted and weird. It's just odd, you know? Do you know what I mean? It's just a bizarre way to create that sort of film.
To be honest, I back Benjamin Button simply because of the fact that it wasn't easy to do at that time period, and they worked fucking hard on that. It's not just like they have the advanced software now that couldn't be used, and what came out of it from that hard work from the special effects artists for the time was incredible. De Niro in The Irishman. It's a very long film, it's 4 hours long, and to be looking at it for 4 hours or however long the de-aging parts are, I had had enough of it by the end. So for me, the actual effects of it were good, but in the whole scheme of the film, I didn't like it.
I kind of liked the effects and didn't. Some of the shots were seamless and perfect and wonderful. Some of the ages, I was looking at it and I was like, that doesn't even look like a real person, let alone De Niro when he's young. Why does his eyes look so weird? It just looked odd to me. Not enough to take me out of it, but I was noticing it. There's a special effect you're supposed to notice, you know, the big explosion in the background or the alien ship flying through the air. And then there's a special effect you're not meant to notice. And that's one of the special effects you're not supposed to notice. So the fact that I was noticing it obviously is bad. But I gotta admit, the fact that I could see Bobby De Niro and Al Pacino and Joe Pesci go from young to old so seamlessly, it was just wonderful. And the fact that it was built into the film, like we really saw these guys' entire lives. And as it gets to the point where he's literally dying and, you know, the cop says to him, everyone's dead, like who are you protecting? Just talk to us. Martin Scorsese's done everything. He's amazing. He's incredible. The fact that he's still trying new things and he saw this weird new technology, majority of the time it's probably used on Marvel films and whatever, but he thought, what can I do with this? And he found a reason to create a film using this technology where you really followed these people's lives to the end of it.
Age, contemplative nature of it, something where there's an accumulation of detail, banal details of everyday life, that ultimately add up to a life that you have to leave.
In terms of technology though, when I was researching for this, I found out something that honestly kind of made me feel weird about the film and made me think about it a bit differently. And it's the fact that the way they created it, they had this cool rig where basically you've got one camera in the middle and then two infrared cameras on the side. And the infrared cameras capture it without any shadows or wrinkles or anything. And those are used to go into the computer for the software that then is used to capture that performance. Before that, they had all the actors use motion capture and do 100 different expressions of all the lines from the films in various ways to kind of build up a database of their expressions, the way their face moves. Then they downloaded and studied and analysed all their films, all their classic films from before throughout the ages, and used this all to combine into essentially like an AI software that would watch the footage that they would film for real in the scenes with the real actors and combine it with all that other stuff I said to create their performance. Recreate their performance, really. So what you're looking at on the screen, although it essentially is Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci acting, it's not. It actually isn't. It's a version of it. And I guess someone might argue that, well, when you're watching a shot of them, the lighting and the type of camera you use, even back in the 70s, completely changes the image and way things look, and that's not what they really look like in real life, and blah, blah, blah. And I get that, but it's just different. It's as much their real performance as your shadow is really you. Like, it's not. It's a computer drawing of your performance, essentially. It isn't really their performance, and it just made me feel weird about it.
So what you're basically saying is, if you weren't into films like we're into films, and you just went to watch the film on face value and didn't look into the technical aspects of it and walked away from it thinking, oh, it's them, but the software's just applied to make them look younger, you would have loved it. But since you found out that it's fake, in a sense, it puts a downer on it.
Yeah, to be honest, it doesn't make me feel different about the film. It makes me feel different about the tech in general and what it means for the future of filmmaking.
Yeah, that's so you're concerned about what it looks like in the future.
I don't even have a real stance on it yet. I'm not going to be like, oh, I'm against it or whatever. Like, it's going to be used in wonderful ways, but I definitely feel weird about it. I don't have a good feeling about it like the way I did before.
Robert Downey Jr. and Captain America Civil War. Marvel films today have so many gimmicks, so over the top with CGI and explosions and everything like that. When I saw it, Declan, I was just sitting there numb, being like, oh, Robert Downey Jr. is Iron Man, but he's just younger. Because I've seen Marvel do all these other things with cameos and all this and that and whatever they do in the films. I just didn't give a shit about it.
Marvel do a lot of it, and they've got better at it. Kurt Russell is a famous one in Guardians of the Galaxy 2, where they really fucking nailed it, I think.
Tron Legacy. I really like this one because, number one, I fucking love Jeff Bridges. Like, anything he's in, Crazy Heart.
He's the dude, mate.
Big Lebowski, and to see him with the whole cool, aesthetic of Tron, the flashing lights, the flashing suit, and at the age Tron Legacy, I was loving it, man.
Again, I was with you where de-aging was way more of a novelty when that came out, but the fact that it's Tron and we're bringing back young Jeff Bridges, I was like, boom. Now, it's not good de-aging. It isn't the best. It looks really ropey now, to be honest, but again, because of the context of the film it's in, the look and feel of a Tron film, those sharp angles and completely black backgrounds with just bright coloured fluorescent shapes moving around and ridiculous imagery. Visually, Tron's one of the most unique films ever. The fact that the de-aging wasn't that great nearly worked in its favour, kind of like how I was talking about the Terminator dodgy uses of it before. It actually kind of worked for it.
We've seen recently Hollywood studios pumping out a lot of remakes, a lot of reboots, not original content, lazy, flogging a cash cow. With the use of de-aging, gives them even more power to do this. You know what everyone loves? Indiana Jones. You know what everyone loves? Star Wars. Why don't we make Luke Skywalker young again? And it just gives them the ability to be like, let's just do a reboot of this or a reboot of that, because we know that people are going to vote with their feet and go and watch it, and we're going to make a ton of money. If they're going to keep using de-aging to do reboots, it also blocks the pathway for up and coming actors to have their breakout roles. We might miss a generational actor because they decide to not commission that script, to basically be like, oh, this is good, but let's make another Princess. Well, it's probably a bad example because she's dead. It actually blocks the pathways of really, really good films potentially getting put in the bin to make reboots.
Yeah, do you know what? You're so right. That's such a good point, because even in normal acting eras without this tech, you think there's certain roles in Hollywood that are just kind of nailed down. Like the Mexican guy from Crash. You immediately know who I'm talking about.
I do.
And he was pretty much the go-to Mexican guy in Hollywood films for small parts for a long, long time. And you got to think there was some Mexican actor who was really good, who was biding his time like, oh mate, please, a dodgy sex tape comes out of this guy or something, and he gets cancelled so I can just fucking get in there and be the Mexican guy. The fat guy who gets poison in his eye in Jurassic Park, who was the go-to fat guy for a while. But that's going to be even worse because, you know, there should be some new action stars coming up, but Sly Stallone can look like he's 30. Even when he's in the old age home, they're just fucking like motion capturing him as he's getting his fucking nappy changed. It will clog up and fuck up the natural pathway for new talent to be rising up, potentially, but I guess it will make the indie scene way more important.
If actors are signing contracts, and you talked about deep fakes where, you know, a lot of actors are actually suing deep fakes and stuff like that for using their likeness without their permission, maybe an actor who's getting older on their deathbed signs a contract and says, after I die, de-age me as much as you want and put me in films. And what's stopping Hollywood bigwigs being like, Clint Eastwood's dead, but here he is in a film again. He's signed the documents, you know what I mean? And it could potentially go that way.
You know, when you hear it, it's easy to have your first reaction be like, oh, I don't want that. That'll be shit. But, you know, if in 20 years' time they're bringing out The Good, the Bad and the Ugly 2, and it's young Clint Eastwood running around as a gunslinger again, I might be liable to hand over my money if the technology's really convincing. And, you know, the film's obviously, to be honest, even if the film's shit, I'd still go see it. I don't know. It's one of those things where you don't want to stand in the way of technology, but it's getting to the point where it's so manipulative. Just there's no telling where it's going. You said about, you know, signing a contract before they die, but what if the family estate signs the rights over after they die? Like, what's the legality of that? Will they be able to do that? They get a claim to their parents' royalties for their work. You know, Token's grandchildren signed off all of Middle Earth off to Amazon. What's to say Clint Eastwood might think, no, I never would want to do that, but he passes away and, you know, his family or any other actor's family's estate essentially sells their soul to the studio where they can use that likeness forever. Not just in movies, but why not selling a product? You know, Clint Eastwood dressed as a cowboy in his heyday and he's shooting holes in a wall that eventually makes up the Apple logo. There is a real creepy factor to it.
Yeah, I mean, I hope these actors and their legal teams, which will be good because they're famous, are wise to this trend and what's going on.
Well, luckily, there's no history of people in the entertainment industry getting fucked over by their lawyers or agents.
Yeah.
So you're talking about how I found out afterwards that it wasn't actually truly their performance in The Irishman, and it made me feel weird. And it also got me thinking about if that technology, say, it advances so much and becomes so much cheaper and more accessible and available to even smaller films, what if it becomes the norm to film in this way, even when you're most likely going to use the normal performance? But in post, the director just, you know, wants to make some tweaks. Like, can she frown a bit more? Or she nearly smirked there, can we change that? Or, just, you know, she's not expressive enough. Or you just want to change little things. And what if, you know, they start doing it without the actors even knowing? You don't remember every little micro expression you made in every particular take. So how are they going to know that their performance hasn't been altered afterwards? And how are they going to feel about it? Some might be outraged, some might be indifferent, some might be for it. And what if that just becomes the accepted norm? And to be honest, is that even a bad thing? Like, ultimately, I guess the director's vision is the most important thing. The final product is the most important thing. We don't get upset about the fact that that wasn't really an alien in Independence Day. So why should we be upset about that wasn't truly that actor's performance? You know, why is that not just the next evolution in filmmaking?
But that again raises a moral question. Like, if a film came out and went on to become one of the greatest films in history and sweep 15 Oscars or something, and only that actor and the director knew that the performance was heavily modified and us, the cinema goer, didn't, you know, me personally, I wouldn't really be cool with that, because I'd be like, yes, here's my Oscar for Best Actor, but it wasn't what I'd done. Like, it would get to me, you know?
That's so true. Like, the actor goes up for their speech. Should they be accompanied by the 100 visual effects artists who also, I guess, deserve credit for it? That does create this weird world where you're not really looking at acting anymore. You're looking at special effects and you're looking at, you know, a creation, which ultimately is a bunch of people's vision to make a film, but usually it's got to be mainly one person's, like one guy that has the final say, one guy that, this is what I've envisioned, this is what I want, and everyone's just an instrument or a tool to make that happen. So granting them even more control over it, I guess, should be better. It's kind of like when we're talking about practical effects, where part of the reason Jaws was so brilliant is because the fucking shark didn't work. I don't know if greater technology is better. I don't think Spielberg's films got better once he could just have unlimited budgets and CGI and literally do whatever he thought of. Things going wrong can be great for a film, and the little weird, unusual things that happens in a certain take that they end up keeping. You know, Aragorn in Lord of the Rings, where they're searching for Merry and Pippin and he kicks that helmet and he really broke his toe, so he really let out a real scream. I guess those little accident things could still happen because you're still filming it, but you're giving the director more control to be like, oh, let's just fix that. Let's just change that. You know, it's the George Lucas thing of, oh, let me go in and make the other guy shoot at Han Solo first, so Han Solo doesn't seem as bad. And the beauty of it is the randomness that comes out from it being so collaborative.
Dustin Hoffman in Midnight Cowboy. I'm walking here. That was real. The cab came and hit into him and he smashed the bonnet, you know. I would probably refuse to watch those films. To me, it's too overproduced. It's too fake. You know, I haven't even fucking seen Avatar 2. I refused to watch it because I saw Avatar, I caved in after however long because everyone else had seen it and I wanted to discuss it, and I hated it. It was gimmicky, it was really CGI heavy. It would be a big no for me. I refuse to watch these films. I'm saying that now. Like,
I respect it, but I ain't gonna lie, I'm probably still gonna hand over my money.
fair enough.
Or not hand over my money and sell to high seas, if you catch my drift.
Yeah.
But either way, I'm gonna be there. I just know I will. It's like if I said my football team got bought by an oil baron and they sold their soul. I'm not one of those people who says, oh, I'd never watch them again. I'd go support my local team because I just wouldn't. I'd be sucked back in. I have no choice. It's an addiction. It's a passion. I love it and I'll just always be there. But yeah, I don't know if I'll like it. I don't know how I feel about it when it comes. So maybe de-aging will be the future of film and just take over and we'll never be able to get away from it. Or maybe it'll be like 3D, where it kind of is just a passing fad and eventually directors will go back to just when they want to portray someone young, they either cast a young actor or make the normal actor have long fuzzy sideburns and poofy hair and bell bottoms. Who knows? Let us know in the comments.